This is the podcast overview for week 8. We will be covering chapter 7, anxiety, anger, and depression. So here's your to-do list for the week. You're just going to be reading in the Harrington textbook this week, chapter 7. So let me go through this. I have your objectives for the chapter, and you can click here if you'd like to hear more about each objective and kind of an overview of that. Your lecture slides are here. And then I've posted a number of very short videos. One has to do with diaphragmatic breathing, otherwise known as belly breathing. And so this is talked about in the chapter, and I wanted you to see how it works and be able to practice that. I have another video that outlines the DSM categories or classifications for anxiety disorders. So some of you may have taken abnormal psych and you may know this already. You may be familiar with the different classifications of anxiety disorders, but if you're not, please watch the video. This is super important. It will help you in understanding the chapter a little bit more, and I would recommend watching all of these videos before you read the chapter. And then I have a video on both obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, and anxiety disorders. This is a crash course video. It kind of takes you through what those disorders are like, symptomology, outcomes, treatment, all of that. I have a video on intermittent explosive disorder, which deals with the anger side, the anger issues. This is based off of the DSM-5. The DSM continues to be revised, but all the basics are here. So if you're not familiar with intermittent explosive disorder, you're going to want to watch that. I have another one on major depressive disorder, and that will finish up the videos. So these are all really important because they give you glimpses of what these disorders are like, how they're classified by the DSM, what are some of the precursors, early signs, symptoms, and more importantly, how would someone be treated with these disorders. Now, all of that's going to be important for this week's discussion. So this week's discussion will be based off of Chapter 7 in the Harrington book, as well as the videos. So those are both going to be two great resources that are going to help you to answer these questions. The first question has you completing the insight exercise, 7.1, which is on page 212. There's a self-analysis questionnaire. You're going to fill that out, and you're going to interpret your score according to the directions given, and tell me about it. Tell me what you got and what you think about this, and more importantly, what does the scale say about your score? 2, what top 3 strategies described in the chapter do you believe are most effective for managing everyday anxiety that you may experience? So this is going to be different for each person who responds. What do you think are the 3 most effective strategies? Have you tried any of these strategies in your personal life? And if so, how effective did you find them? And why did you pick those 3 strategies over some of the other ones mentioned? Number 3, why do you think stress is linked to depression? This is an interesting one here, okay? And I want you to use what you learned from the reading, not why do you personally think stress is linked to depression, although I'd love to know. I want to know, like, why? What has research shown that would even be compelling evidence to suggest that there's a link there between depression and stress? We're a few generations that are very ill-equipped to deal with stress. And what I mean there is, I think the last 2 to 3 maybe generations haven't really been equipped well in how to deal with everyday stressors, intermittent stressors. Things come at us and we don't have effective strategies really for dealing with stress. So what factors do you think might contribute to that? Why do you think that we are in such a place today? Why aren't people better at handling their stress? Like, why is it such a big issue? What might be the role of media and social media and just our overall culture today? What role would that be playing in our ill-equipped methods of dealing with stress? I mean, if you think about it, the majority of people today deal with stress by medicating, drinking, drugs, all sorts of vices, having affairs, kind of resorting to denial, not addressing issues or problems, not addressing the stress, maybe feeling helpless, and so they just don't deal with it. There's a whole host of number of things as to why people can't really face their stress. And so here's where you get to kind of shed some light on that. And number 4, how can a person create self-generated stress? What is that, self-generated stress? That leads to a depressed mood. So there's some literature that speaks to that in the chapter. And how do you distinguish between normal depression and clinical depression? Sometimes depression is normal. There's highs and lows in life. We're not always going to be happy. Sometimes we will be sad. Sometimes we will be really sad. And sometimes that's normal, and sometimes it's not. So that's what we're talking about here when we talk about quote unquote normal depression and then clinical depression. And here's where those videos are going to come in handy that outline DSM criteria for clinical depression. So make sure that you watch those. What strategies can a person employ to maintain a healthy mental state and at the same time flourish? There's that word again. We talked about this word back in chapter 2. So little hint, you might want to go back to chapter 2 as well for some ideas here to add to what you're going to say from the current chapter 7. And then lastly, what the video on abdominal breathing. Watch the video on abdominal breathing and do the exercise along with the video. That's that first video I posted. And tell me, how do you feel about doing this exercise? What benefit can you see an exercise like this having in moments of anger and stress? How might that type of exercise, that breathing exercise, help you in moments of anger and stress? Okay, and that wraps up the discussion. And then you have your third exam, which is going to cover chapters 6 and 7. Again, it's 40 minutes to complete 40 questions. Each question is worth 2 points. So please let me know as you're working your way through the material this week if you have any questions.